There we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Landy Lodge. We've got a Final Fantasy VII episode today. FF7 is hitting the headlines with plenty of Ever Crisis drops. We actually won't get to all the Ever Crisis we need to catch up on today. We have a lot of First Soldier that we need to get to, but today in particular, we're going to be talking about the Aerith scene now that Ever Crisis has caught up to the end of Rebirth. And when I went into today, I thought that I would do a podcast strictly about the two scenes between the two games. But honestly, I think today's episode, I want to speak about Ever Crisis more generally, talk about these two scenes most certainly, but then also kind of speak about what this means for the future of Part 3, as well as also get into a statement that Square Enix made today that may or may not have an implication for Part 3. So, let's give a shout out to the early birds. I see we have plenty in here. Suko, Bars, Nick, my man Yo-Yo over on X, who's running his mouth in all the best ways. Didn't First Soldier die a few years ago? I think the live service shooter died, but the story updates that you can access through Ever Crisis, right? This is Square Enix at their best here. The First Soldier standalone app is down, but the First Soldier story segment inside Ever Crisis is still rolling. Anyway, Rocky is here, as well as Falcone, Seven Hearts, and Tiresome Rhinox. I put a poll over on YouTube. I see we got Will's Word over on Twitch. I see you over there, Will. Asking, which sequence did you prefer? The Rebirth sequence or the Ever Crisis sequence? Right now, we are looking at 73% say Rebirth, 27% say Ever Crisis. I'm curious to see how that unfolds. I certainly have my own opinion, and we'll get into that. But let's see. I think the first thing I'm going to touch on actually is going to be Ever Crisis more generally. And let me actually pull this up. Ever Crisis really is something interesting, and always has been. I think Square Enix has done a good job pulling this off. Although we have to acknowledge that, this game sort of represents the end of an era, right? Square Enix has gone through a whole bunch of restructuring, and mobile games were among the first things to get canned. So with Square Enix's restructure, we're just not going to be getting the mobile games that we used to. And frankly, Dex, I see you, Dex. I see you. You ain't no chopped liver, Dex. I see you, man. Don't you do that to me. But Square Enix is moving on from this mobile game era. I think you may see a handful of mobile games here and there, and they'll serve their own purpose. Ever Crisis is one of the few mobile games that actually made the cut. So, with all the ones getting shut down, I'm happy that this was one of the ones to survive, because I think it does make way for some unique conversations, and I think will present Square Enix with a very unique opportunity when all this is done. So, not going to talk about the scene in question just yet, and when we get up to that, I'll pull the scene back so we don't overlap, but here, let me take a little swig. What's up, Shadow Flare? This should eventually become a standalone game. Okay, look, they're basically shot for shot in a lot of ways remaking the original FF7 on the PS1. And in so many ways, when I look at this, I'm like, yeah, this is what the PS1 game looked like to me. In a lot of ways, obviously the PS1 was a lot more blocky, but they really did a good job of achieving like as close as you could get to that original FF7 charm. So I commend them for what they were able to pull off here. And I actually think it would be a total waste if that when the FF7 trilogy and Ever Crisis get to the end of their run, that this doesn't eventually become its own standalone game so that people can experience the story of FF7 in a more traditional way. So, like, for instance, outside of, say, the Crisis Core sequence, the Advent Children sequence they're going to do, the First Soldier sequence they're going to do, basically, they're going to flesh out every single scenario within the Final Fantasy compilation. And as far as the OG goes, there's going to be a lot of not complete shot-for-shot, right? But a lot of shot-for-shot scenes that are going to look more familiar than even what we saw in Rebirth. And as far as the OG goes, there's going to be a lot of not complete shot-for-shot, right? But a lot of shot-for-shot scenes that are going to look more familiar than even what we saw in Rebirth. Comes back. I don't know, can you guys hear me, see me? I'm looking at my bit rate. Okay, we're back. We didn't lose it. Are we chilling? I think we made it. I think we made it through the disconnect. Chat, can you hear me? I think we made it. Yeah, actually, I'm looking. We're okay. All right, I'm just going to keep rolling till you guys tell me otherwise. So, anyway, if they just replace certain things like the weapon system and the item system, kind of replace the gacha mechanic with some different ways to obtain weapons, maybe more traditionally through finding it in the open world, purchasing at shops, things of the sort. Yeah, you're good now. Yeah, it looks like we lost ourselves for a little there, but we made it back. So I think they have a unique opportunity, especially here with Ever Crisis, that they could, in a sense, remake this to be a console experience so that if you wanted a more traditional FF7 experience, something that's a little bit more shot for shot with the original, that becomes available to you. Now, again, think about the opportunity that's presented even outside of OG FF7. Again, you'll be able to play through the Crisis Core sequence, the Dirge sequence, Advent Children sequence, First Soldier sequence. I even think there's a chance that they're going to do... Here, let me pull this back. When does Big Boy come down? Okay, not for a little while. Actually, pull it back here. So, let me pull these sleeves up. And we're back and rolling on Twitch as well. I'm happy to see it. Okay. But again, think about it. You basically can encase sort of a reductive but effective compilation of the entire FF7 story. So that, say, if somebody was first getting into FF7 and depending on where they're jumping in, they could boot up this Ever Crisis game on a console and familiarize themselves with certain scenarios, certain games, certain pockets of the timeline. Sean's, hey, it was cool to meet you. It was very good to meet you too, man. Thanks for dropping in here. Nakugel says, I wanted to let you know that in the last Crisis Core story update in Ever Crisis, they added new scenes that weren't in OG Crisis Core. That's interesting too. And this is something that's going to make Ever Crisis something that I think has to remain available after the servers come down. Because look, live service games, the servers come down. And to Square Enix's credit, they've done a good job that even when a live game server comes down, if that game was popular enough, they maintain it. So, for instance, Final Fantasy XI. If you want to experience Final Fantasy XI, even though that game's pretty much over, Square Enix has made that available to you. I'm certain they'll do something similar with FF14, and I'm certain so long as FF7 is relevant, they'll do the same with Ever Crisis. But given that it is one game that contains a summary and in some ways an expansion of these different scenarios and different parts of the FF7 timeline, I think as good as this game looks, as much as people like it, again, I think they would be foolish not to preserve it in some way that people can experience it. Crazy Comics, dude, what is going on? What's up, Rockstar? What's up, Rockstar? How's it going, man? Good to see you in here. Okay, there was a discussion on remaking FF7 in the same vein of Expedition 33. You know, no, I don't think that's going to happen. At the end of the day, the remake trilogy is the remake. They're not going to do this again. I think if you want another way of experiencing FF7, the only way you're going to get it is if they make a more console-friendly or one-player-friendly version of Ever Crisis. Not that Ever Crisis isn't one-player-friendly, but get rid of those gacha mechanics and stuff of that sort in the long run. Knuckles says, dumb question, maybe for someone that's never played FF7. Play original or jump to remakes? My suggestion, play the original first. You can do the remakes first if you want. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But I think the best experience would be to play the original first and then go to the remakes. If you want the best experience, Nux, that's what you should do. Okay. Let's see. That way everybody gets what they want. Two kinds of remakes. Exactly. Everybody becomes satisfied in that vein. Basically, it would be a way to basically satisfy both sides of the FF7 fandom. Okay. Now, I, again, kind of wanted to make that point about Ever Crisis. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. And when we watch the full version of that scene, and I actually think there's a scene that comes after it that's way more important, I think it's worth noting that that's an experience that should be preserved in some way. Don't let it die like so many mobile games have died. Keep it available. Put it on console, port it. You've already ported it to Steam. That's half the battle. Just make the updates that get some of those gacha mechanics out. In the long run, I understand they need the gacha mechanics now. They got to make their money. But when the game is at its service end, I think that would be a really good idea to do. Okay. Nick says, I don't agree, Nux. Just start with the remake project. Hey, to each their own. To each their own. Nick's been a long-time FF7 fan just like me, so his opinion just as valid. Remake Expedition 33 in the style of Expedition 33. Yes, do it every week. Going very well, having trouble settling back into real life. I hear you, Crazy Comics, but you keep rocking. You keep rocking. Okay, so look, before we bring up the Ever Crisis scene, I do want to roll basically Rebirth scene and sort of familiarize those of you watching about overall how I felt about the end of FF7 Rebirth. So in case you're new here, again, the channel has grown a lot the last few months, even though I really haven't done so much, but we've been doing a lot the last couple weeks, and that's where a lot of the growth's come from. But anyway, so when it came to FF7 Rebirth, I absolutely loved the game. It was my game of the year. I think it was definitely faithful to the original, which is all I ask. I always just want these sorts of remakes, remasters to remain faithful to the source material. I think even with its diversions and in the ways that it changed and made changes, Rebirth was unquestionably faithful to the original. Especially, I know some people feel a type of way about the ending, which we will discuss, but in the long run, what happened here is going to remain faithful to the original. Rojic says, nice stream as always, Landy. Did you see that David Gallagher started playing KH1 for the first time? Yes, he did. I go by Raven, I believe his tag is. We actually rated him during his stream. It was a good time. Man was having fun. Part 3 can't get here soon enough. I agree, Little Orphan Funkhauser. Let it reach us soon. So again, absolutely loved Rebirth. I've been a fan of FF7 since the late 90s. So I loved and adored the game. It was everything I dreamed it would be. I want Part 3 to maintain the direction that Rebirth took. Now, again, for those who may not be familiar, Remake took a direction with its ending, right? And when Remake ended, we saw that the characters were a little more self-aware than they should have been, and that things were a little bit different than they should have been. Not with the expansions, right? With like Chocobo Sam and Madam M and characters like that. Not with those sorts of expansions, but that in the sequence of events, certain things were happening differently, right? Somebody was tampering with the sequence of events in some way. And then you had the ending without getting too far into it, but you had something that said, you know, Nux. I know Nux is in here and he hasn't played FF7. Nux, I'm going to ask you to leave because we are going to spoil the major part of this story. And I don't want to do that to you. So I want you to sign off and say farewell. I'm saying this because you are my friend and I love you. I do not want to spoil what we're about to discuss. It will completely hinder your FF7 experience. So I need you to say farewell so we know we're safe here. I will not do this as somebody who I know personally but is also in my audience. We will not do this to you. Appreciate that. Talk to you later, brother. Talk to you later, guys. Check out Knuckles X30 on YouTube. He's streaming Kingdom Hearts for the first time, getting into the series for the first time. He's a great dude, loves his fiction, passionate about this kind of stuff. Look forward to seeing more from him. Knuckles, thanks for dropping in. Okay, now that we have protected him, right? Now that we have protected him from getting spoiled on the crux of this whole thing, getting back into Rebirth and the way this scene was handled. I loved this part in particular. Let me lower myself a little bit. I think I'm just speaking a little bit too loud. I'm going to lower my volume. There we go. Okay. So I did think that this scene, for all intents and purposes, was handled well. But going back to Remake, the unknown journey will continue. So that's really what I wanted to discuss. The whole unknown journey will continue. Now, that was interpreted in a lot of ways by a lot of different people. Some people thought that meant, oh my God, the whole FF7 story is changing. Some people thought that meant, oh my God, this is like an alternate timeline. We're in a multiverse. Some people thought that meant, oh my God, this is actually a sequel to FF7. Some people thought, hey, this could be a time loop. Basically, the way Remake ended, it answered a lot of questions, like what the Whispers are. Right? We no longer had any questions what the Whispers are. They were guardians of fate, the Whispers, right? So, but a new mystery was unveiled to us that was left rather vague. The unknown journey will continue. And of course, like I mentioned, lots of people took that lots of different ways. Now, I will admit that I, for one, entertained a lot of different ideas. At certain points, I thought it was a time loop. At other times, I thought it was a sequel. At other times, I thought we were in like a DC level multiverse. Like there were times I entertained these ideas, but then Integrate came out, right? And then the cutscenes that came with Integrate, and you see the party heading to Calm, and then the Rebirth, and then the Crisis Core reunion comes out, right? And then the Rebirth marketing material comes out. More and more I'm seeing, I'm like, oh, this doesn't look like it's a sequel. This doesn't look like everything's going to change. It looks like a faithful retelling where they've created a narrative fluid enough to allow them to make certain changes. Not fundamental changes, but changes that primarily allow them to expand on the lore, expand on characters, expand on towns and settings and history. So again, that whole unknown journey will continue. We severed ourselves off from Fate. We killed Fate. Lots of people thought that meant that this scene was going to be different. The towns we visited would be different. Who the villain was going to be would be different. Who wins in the end would be different. A lot of these ideas were that fundamental things about FF7 were going to change. But again, with Integrate, Crisis Core, and then Rebirth, both its marketing materials and the game, we all saw, in my opinion, very clearly, what up, Lands the Master? We all saw very clearly that the fundamental story of Final Fantasy VII is going to stay the same. But that the changes that are being made, right, and them making room for changes was not to fundamentally shake the story to its core, but again, to allow the story to expand further out, right? So that Cisne could be in Gungaga, right? so that Cisne could be in Gongaga, so that Zack could play a more active role in the unveiling of the events without him interfering with, say, the path the party should be walking to the Temple of the Ancients and to the Forgotten Capital. They found a very clever way to allow themselves to keep things faithful to the original, but again, expand in certain ways that they could include the overall compilation in this sequence of events. Again, with the Integrate DLC, Dirge of Cerberus now gets introduced much earlier into the narrative. Things like that are what the changes were about, not about changing the ultimate outcome of the scene we see on screen. Oof. Now again, part 3 is still upon us. Part 3 is still upon us. So for all we know, things could be very different in the end. Maybe they were pulling our legs. Maybe the wool got pulled over my eyes. And in fact, things are going to be very different in part 3. My opinion, based on Remake plus Rebirth, it really does not seem to be like that's happening. But we'll see. I remember people theorizing Tifa would take Aerith's place. I had theories, and some people misconstrued this, but I had theories that Tifa was going to be targeted. That Sephiroth was going to be more aware how powerful Tifa was and how helpful she can be to Cloud, and that Sephiroth in particular wouldn't only single out Aerith, but would also target Tifa. That ended up being correct. But I never thought that Tifa was going to take Aerith's place in this scene. It wouldn't make sense. Tifa's not an ancient. Dex says you're right, but I would argue Remake pre-integrate definitely led to the other side. Dex, that's where I can level with you. Is it was at the very least 50-50. At the very least it was 50-50, but I agree with you that with the end of Remake, people were justified in thinking the story could go anywhere. People were, they weren't making a stretch, right? There was an implication things were going to change. We didn't know what the nature of those changes would be. Right? For all we knew, it meant that this scene was going to be very different. But it didn't. But it didn't. Alrighty. So again, getting back into this Rebirth scene. Right, let me skip ahead this battle, even though it's a sweet battle. Let's take it... right about here, okay? Which is why some people talk about the developers going back on the sequel idea, which I don't agree with, but I get the sentiment. Yeah, I don't agree with it either, because it still makes perfect sense with what they ended up doing anyway, right? Just because they said things were going to be changing doesn't mean they said fundamental things were going to be changing. And if you go through the interviews, the devs always said they were going to keep it faithful to the original. The devs always said they were going to honor the original works. And again, as we see, it seems to me that what the Remake trilogy is sort of a definitive version of the compilation. Not a definitive version of the original, but a definitive version of the compilation. Because I think the guys over at Square, they know they're not going to be, I see some questions in the chat about this, but they know they may not have the resources to remake Dirge of Cerberus or to make an Advent Children game or to expand on the ideas in the novels. But again, what this trilogy is serving as is, again, not a definitive version of the original work, but a definitive version of the compilation. Because again, it's not just the games that are being referenced and being expanded on in this trilogy, but the books and the novels too. It's wild. Also, the expansion of Gi and Gi Attack was pretty cool. Exactly. And I feel like if Remake didn't introduce the idea of change, some kind of change, a lot of these expansions, I think people would have called it padding, or they would have accused it of being padding, which I don't think would have been fair. But I think that's why Remake introduced this sort of idea that things were going to be different this time around. Now, again, I don't think we're in sequel territory. I don't think we're in Super DC multiverse territory. I think it's possible we could be in a time loop, because Final Fantasy I is a time loop, and it's possible that this is just like the second lap of the time loop, which could still preserve that this is its own telling, Doesn't make it a sequel, but you get the point. Overall, it's supposed to be a definitive version of the compilation, not necessarily a definitive version of the original. Okay. Let's switch things up now. And again, my overall opinion on the ending of Rebirth, I thought the scene had its peak moments. They were saying, you know what, it's up right now. I might as well just leave it there. But this scene had its peak moments. But ultimately, I think the reason why I prefer the original sequence more is because I think this version in Rebirth left you thinking more than feeling. Right? It left you thinking more than feeling. Whereas the original had you feeling much more than you were thinking. Now, a lot of us have picked up to what's going on here. A lot of this is to build up to what they're going to do in part 3, more than likely during the live stream sequence. But again, they kept things relatively a little bit ambiguous here, enough so that you know what happened, but that the full payoff isn't there. The water burial, which we'll get into today, wasn't there. They're saving that for part 3. However, I think one of the things they could have done better is a little bit more feeling, a little bit less thinking. Because I felt like they got the balance completely wrong. Kel says, surely it has to be a sequel. Given the remake games, we see events from other compilation entries. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a sequel, though. You know what I'm saying? A sequel would take place after Advent Children. Or after Dirge, technically. I think just because they see events from other compilation entries doesn't necessarily mean it's a sequel. We see that Sephiroth is tampering with reality, and things are falling out of place, and things are fractionating, and messages are being sent across time, which again, Final Fantasy has always worked with time. So again, until part 3 is out, I'm not going to say anything is impossible, Kels, but it's very obvious to me that this isn't necessarily sequel territory. It's more that reality itself is being tampered with. And with it being tampered with, you have forces, Lifestream White and Lifestream Black, that are trying to benefit their side by sending transmissions through time. But we'll see, right? We will see. Rogic says, I think all things with time travel and alternate timelines has to do with the live stream. But they don't explain it to keep us excited by theorizing. I actually think Sephiroth laid it out pretty clear. Is that contained within the live stream are people's desires, people's dreams, right? You have life on the surface, life on Gaia. Contained within Gaia is the live stream. Contained within the live stream are people's hopes, people's dreams, and people's desires. So all those alternate worlds that you see in FF7 are contained within the live stream and are made up of people's dreams, desires, and hopes. Whereas the reality that's on the surface is an actual functioning base reality and is not the made up of like thought energy or again, thoughts and dreams and desires. That's in the live stream. So I do think they actually do lay it out pretty well, but let's see. We'll see. We shall see in part 3. We shall see in part 3. Now, let's switch over. Let's finally switch over to the Ever Crisis side of things. Now that I've spoken on how I feel about Rebirth's ending. And I did, again, love the game. I don't think they quite stuck the landing. I saw what they did. I think it's a great setup, right? I think the end of Rebirth is an amazing setup for part 3, but a subpar ending for part 2. That's how I felt. Incredible setup for part 3, subpar ending for part 2. Loved the game. Was my game of the year. No disrespect. Okay. Now, let's see here. Let's pull this up. I actually want to watch the scene. We're going to actually watch the scene. Yo, no way! No way, people. Can we give it up? Can we give it up for Nick dropping a freaking $50 super chat? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Dude, $5 is generous. You don't gotta go that hard, bro. But I appreciate it. Let's read this chat. It says, I love how people want to claim the devs backtracked on the Unknown Journey tagline, as if unknown things didn't exist. The Gi and Black Materia, how we'd interact with the world map. I'll give you that like. How the combat would evolve. How the live stream would evolve and function. Nick, 110% correct. 1 second. 110% correct. The devs never went back on their word. They always told us it was going to honor the original. It would be faithful to the original. There was a little bit of teasing about Aerith, but even in Remake, they kind of made it clear Aerith was going to go. But yeah, when it comes to the Unknown Journey, like you said, there are things like the Gi Attack, the Gi Attack, and things like that that expand and evolve the world of FF7, and more explanation about how the live stream works and things like that. Again, the live stream is something that's evolved massively in the Remake trilogy. Nick, simply the best. Absolutely. One of the goats. One of the goats in chat. So cheers. Cheers to that. Nox says, I think it was a business decision to bring Aerith fans for the last game. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that in there. I'm not going to lie to you. I think there is a little bit of that in there. That they wanted to find a way, and it might be there. It might simply be the devs' love for Aerith, but they definitely wanted to find a way to make Aerith more of a factor in the final act. Again, she's huge in the climax, but I think they wanted to find a way that she can maybe interface with members of the party during this final act. And maybe this is their way of doing it. So we got a comment under here. 1 second. Can I access that? It's not letting me see the comment for some reason, but it is what it is. Maybe I can look at it on my phone. There we go. It's just Funkhauser calling Nick a stud. Accurate. All right. So we're going to watch this scene. We're going to watch this scene because I think it's cool. I'm glad they did something like this. We're going to watch it, and I'll share my thoughts here and there, but enjoy, everybody. That scene. It's my contribution for kicking the nest today. Dude, you 100% kick the nest. Again, I was going to go live and strictly kind of just talk about the scene and how they handled it. But, dude, never be afraid to kick the nest. Never be afraid. This is just video games. It's all in good fun. Batman versus Superman. Make fandom fun. Make having these discussions fun. Even if it means you, like you said, kick a few hornets' nets. Blah. Hornets' nests here and there. Let's let it roll. Oh, dude. I muted the wrong thing. I muted the wrong thing. Let me pull that back because you feel that. You feel that. That pierce. And dude, that is, I have to tell you, Square, I'm begging you, man, don't chicken out on part 3. Don't chicken out on part 3. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Because that is the true horror of the scene. I want to be able to feel Cloud's pain. And I feel like if I don't actually see the horror of this scene like this scene shows it and the original scene shows it, I won't be able to connect with Cloud about why he might want to block his mind out from thinking about this moment. Now, what I mean by that is, in the Rebirth game, you don't really see this full-scale moment where Sephiroth directly pierces Aerith, and you see that motion of her body become lifeless. Because that is ingrained in my brain from the original. It was handled very well here in Ever Crisis, but it was skipped over in Rebirth. Again, that sequence of the actual piercing and Aerith's body becoming lifeless. Like you're watching the life drain out of her body in real time. Her spirit is still there. Some of her mind is still there, but you're watching the life leave her body, and it's bone chilling. It's horrifying. It witnessing that, especially with the graphics we have now, will help me to connect with Cloud and understand again why he may be blocking the trauma of witnessing this from his brain by pretending that Aerith isn't really gone, per se. But let's take it back a little. I want to watch that again, actually, because I want you guys to see exactly what I'm talking about. Again, that moment where you start to see the life leave her body. Okay? And again, I know there's some people out there that are like, but if you love Aerith, why would you want this to happen to her? It's because I don't just love Aerith. I love the story of FF7 and the joy, the wisdom, and the courage that it imparts upon those who experience it. And you can't get that joy and wisdom without suffering, without the realities of death, without the bone-chilling reminder of mortality. Now again, let's run it. Like I said, there's just something about that. It's what solidifies Sephiroth as the villain, because it's the truth of, like, Cloud, whatever you cherish, I will take it. Like, whatever it is you cherish, I will take it from you. Your hometown, your mother, your dreams of being a soldier, Aerith, and yes, multiple times he's tried to take Tifa too. This is not just what makes you understand, like, good storytelling, it's not just about saving the world. It's gotta be personal. It's gotta be personal. That's why Simba has to fight his uncle who killed his father. That's why Cloud, to save the world, has to defeat Sephiroth, who took away his mother, his friend Aerith, his hometown, even tried to take Tifa. It's not enough to save the world in these stories. It's gotta be personal, man. It's gotta be personal. You know what I'm saying? Geez, Landy, Sephiroth spilled Aerith's blood on Cloud's face. You want more violence? I do. I do, because this is a violent death. This is a violent death. I pray we get to see it in part 3. I don't care if it means the game has to be rated M. I don't care. If it means the game's rated M, so be it. So be it. I want to see it. That's how I can feel just how horrified Cloud is. Just how traumatized he is. Because you know what? For all intents and purposes, he didn't quite see his mother go out like that. Where he almost did it. And then when he wouldn't finish the job, this man, the fallen one, descends from the sky. Wasn't Remake rated M? No. I think I have it here. I had the steelbook. I don't think the steelbook says. No, Remake was T. I'm fairly certain. The rating did not hurt sales at all. It won't. If anything, it being, they're both rated T. Thank you, Will. If anything, the game being rated M would get people to talk about it. I don't think Remake even showed blood. Remake didn't show blood. Remake gave us Genova juice. Rebirth gave us blood. On sword, on skin. Amplified the moments. I mean, that's one of the things that's lost about having really good graphics is the cartoon violence of the older, like, games allowed for, you know, more brutal scenes to take place. You know what I'm saying? Now that things are so realistic, they almost need to soften it to appease the ESRB. Okay. That's what we should be arguing about. Why did Remake not have blood, but Rebirth did? It's a good question. Kokiri, Landy, I miss you, man. We had such a fun weekend. Love tuning into FF7 content. Good, because we got plenty of FF7 coming. Because we got to catch up on Ever Crisis OG, and then we're catching up on Ever Crisis First Soldier. So a lot of FF7 coming. Yuffie's Blood and Integrate. Another good point knocked. Another good point. But again, let's keep this going now. Okay, so I just want to pause real quick. This stuff we did get to see in Rebirth. Still hits. It still hits, chat. I know I was muted. I was just doing production anyway. My mistake. It still hits, chat. Even with the chibis. It still hits. Oath, what's going on, Oath? How are you? Let me say real clear too, and this is why I am relieved to see that this was done in Ever Crisis. I was very relieved to actually see this was done. What's up, JK? Thanks for dropping in. Because again, I know that some things are changing, so I don't know how much that plans to go. Seeing these lines, which so iconically like stuck in my heart from the time I was a kid, right? Aerith is gone. She won't laugh. Like, I need to hear Cloud say that, especially because Cody Christian is such an incredible actor. He really brings so much life to Cloud. I really hope these iconic lines get to be said in part 3. Seeing them done in the Ever Crisis rendition of this scene, which Rebirth purposefully omits to connect us with Cloud, I was very relieved to see it. It hits, chat. It still hits. Dude, I would... And that's the other thing, too, you got to realize. And that's why this scene is so important, okay? Look, it's like nobody's in Kingdom Hearts. We're not dumb. We know Cloud has a heart. We know he's not just a hollow puppet. That's what the world wants to make of him, right? In a sense, the world wants to make all of us into hollow puppets, right? Again, that's the risk that Pinocchio runs when he goes to Pleasure Island, gets turned into a goddamn jackass. Which, again, you don't want to be a puppet, you don't want to be a jackass, but the world wants to make you both. Again, the reason why this scene is so important is because it's living proof. There's a reason Sephiroth is taunting Cloud with the idea he's a hollow puppet here, is because his reactions here, they're living proof that he's anything but. That's why those lines of dialogue and him, in a sense, acting out of character. He's dropping the tough guy act. He's dropping the, like, he's like a kid weeping over death. You know, what am I supposed to do now? What do I do with this pain? My eyes are burning. He's like infantilizing. You know, not that men can't have feelings, not that, you know, men don't process things in their own way, but in a sense, the way he's acting out, it's like he's reliving his mother's death. That is the entire point. He's archetypically speaking, and that's why Aerith is a little bit more like motherly than Tifa, the other female lead, is because this is supposed to represent Cloud symbolically losing his mother again. And that's why, again, in a sense, when he's lamenting over her death and he's saying these very obvious things, but very dry and very raw, he's almost, in a sense, infantilizing. It's like he's a kid again. What do I do with this pain? My eyes are burning. My fingers are trembling. Like, there's no one around listening. There's not even anyone around to listen for him to say that to. He's losing it. And again, Sephiroth is here taunting him, saying you're nothing but a hollow puppet. But what this is supposed to show us, and eventually Cloud, is that no, this is proof you're anything but. And that's what leads Cloud to accept his mother's death, to accept the truth of Nibelheim, to accept the death of Aerith, is that because that pain, that suffering, that's what proves that he's not a hollow puppet. So again, I see what Rebirth is going for when they omitted those lines. You see Cloud's lips moving, but you don't hear anything. I think they're reinvesting this into the live stream sequence to make part 3, the climax, the final act, to elevate it above the previous 2 entries. I'm praying they follow through, because this moment, that dialogue is incredibly important to Cloud's character. This is not just the big Aerith scene. This is the big Cloud scene. And there's a reason he breaks after this too. We'll get into it. We'll keep this going. This is because Cloud, you are a puppet. I like what Shadowflare says here. He is breaking through the dissociation, aware of his body's reactions, but unable to comprehend his emotions in the moment, but finally aware of them. But in Rebirth, he was unable to break past the dissociation. Right on point, Shadowflare. I love that. Little Orphan Funkhouse says, that's why I loved Cloud's character. That inability to process feelings and his lack of identity used to hit hard for me as a younger kid. Yeah, I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways, we all go through that at some point, you know? Especially in our adolescence, we all go through that. But that's one thing I will say. I feel like in the original, and I love Cloud's character in the original, but I actually think in the original, Cloud's one of the weaker characters. But in this remake trilogy, especially in Rebirth, Cloud is the best character, in my opinion. And I think if in part 3, they really follow through on the live stream sequence, show us the truth of this event, from Cloud processing the emotions to the water burial itself, man, Cloud really could be, rightfully so, one of the greatest gaming characters of all time. Let's keep it going. Jenova. See, now Jenova's speaking. And again, that you got to remember, that's the symbolism there. Jenova represents that cruel, devouring mother, right? Whereas like Gaia and Cloud's mother, and even Aerith at points represents a more like benevolent mother. Remember, this whole game was inspired by Sakaguchi and the death of his own mother. So that's why that's a big theme in this story. Okay, where Gaia and Aerith represent that loving, benevolent, nurturing mother, Jenova, and by proxy Sephiroth, represent the more devouring aspect of that nature. a puppet. Which again, that's not what Cloud is, but it's what Jenova wants to make of him. It's keep it going. And see, now he's susceptible, right? Like when you're in that kind of state of mind where you're overcome with emotions and there's so much going on, you don't have enough bandwidth to process what's going on, that makes you vulnerable. That makes you suggestible. Dex says, I feel like that's kind of the point of Cloud. Like before regaining his identity, he's like the player to be used in blank state or like a puppet. Exactly. And as the game is going on, he's again, it's funny I brought up Simba earlier, right? It's like, remember who you are, right? That sort of process, right? It's not, a lot of people say stories is about a character finding themselves. I think a better way of putting it, it's a character getting to know themselves. And that's what's going on with Cloud. He's not finding himself. He's getting to know himself. And that includes restoring memories and traumas that he's blocked out. Now, can I say how beautiful that was? I want to run that again, actually. Not, again, and I want, what's up, Folsey? I want cinematic direction in games to go down this road a little bit more. This entire shot, after the big scene and then the Jenova interjection, not one word of dialogue is spoken. You're just left to sit there with the cast and process what just happened. Not one line of dialogue, not one shot, not one narrative text. They played the music and you, along with the cast, sit here, and process what just took place. Just beautiful. And then this, man. This I have full faith. I will say right now, this I have full faith will be in part 3. I have full faith. You can't not do this. This is, and I'm warning you guys, I don't know if I'll stream it, but just visually, I'm going to bawl my eyes out at the visual of the water burial. Just saying. Just saying. Even this chokes me up. Gonna be a tearjerker for sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Going to be absolutely wild. Okay, there's another scene after this that I want to play. Because there's no way, especially with whatever Crisis did, that we're not going to talk about that next scene. Just give me 1 second. But before that, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to take a quick little break. I'll be right back. Gonna refill my water. We'll finish up what we got going on here. Be right back, guys. Oh, dude, I love the Gungaga track. Are you kidding? Gungaga might have been my favorite area in all of Rebirth. It had nothing to do with Cisne, I swear. That's a lie. We love Cisne around here. Do you think they will FF7 the rest after part 3? I don't know. That's tough to say, Rojix. I think in some way, shape, or form, yes. I don't think you get a remake, rebirth, whatever part 3 level game ever again. Maybe you'll get a Dirge remaster. Maybe they make Advent Children into like a 20-hour RPG or something. I don't know. But the scale at which we're getting FF7 now, we will never get it again. We will never get it again. All right, let's watch this last scene here. Let's watch this last scene here. It had nothing to do with Cisne. The lie detector just determined that was a lie. Base, sir, base. Yeah, I mean, come on. Come on. Everyone's all Team Tifa, Team Aerith. I'm Team Cisne, okay? I'm a man of culture, okay? Okay? Let's do this. I think once FF7 Part 3 is done, FF7 is officially done. I think so, too. I think, I really, for the most part, we might get a novel out of Nojima. We might get a remaster from a different team. But I think FF7 overall. We'll stop there. Okay. You know what's crazy? Oh, you know what? I'll hold my thought there. All right, check this out. Now, this goes beyond Rebirth, okay? That's the crazy thing. This goes beyond Rebirth, right? We've officially moved past Rebirth and Ever Crisis, which is kind of nuts. I'm Cloud, ex-soldier, born in Nibelheim. Came to settle things with Sephiroth. Yeah, we knew that, pal. I came here of my own free will, or so I thought. To tell the truth, I'm afraid of myself. See, and now this is what's scary about Rebirth Cloud, is I don't think Rebirth Cloud is this aware of how dangerous he is. Whereas this Cloud is. But we'll see. You hadn't stopped me. And of course, he conceptualizes it as Sephiroth, but in truth, it's Jenova. Jenova is what's inside his bloodstream, his life stream. I'm expecting some Frodo in the Ring parallels with Cloud in the Black Materia. We may see. We may see. Because it's funny, right? Like, there are the parallels there, too. Because just like Frodo, Cloud, after his journey, is very hard on himself. They're very tough on himself for succumbing to the forces that he did. Oh, I like what Shadowflare said here. Sephiroth kept interrupting all the moments of introspection Cloud might have had to process that self-doubt in Rebirth. The false identity is stronger than ever thanks to that. You are right, Will. You are right. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not necessarily Sephiroth's cells that have that power. It's more, it's an age-long debate of like who's in control, right? Who's at the driver's seat? Is Jenova at the driver's seat or is Sephiroth at the driver's seat? Now, in a sense, the two of them are connected because Sephiroth is, was injected with Jenova cells at birth. So Jenova is like a core part of his DNA. So with one does go the other. I've just always kind of been from the standpoint that the part that's in Cloud that's corrupting him belongs so much more to Jenova than it does Sephiroth. Sephiroth had it too, but it's not that like it's the Hojo or Lucrezia cells or DNA that's disrupting Cloud. It's the Jenova ones, right? So I'm with you there. It was good for you to bring that up. But just wanted to make that clarification. That yes, Cloud does have S cells, but within those S cells, my understanding is that even in those S cells, it's Jenova's DNA that is responsible for these distortions and that allow Sephiroth to do the kind of things that he does. Snowboarding time! So there we have it. There we have it. Goes a little bit beyond Rebirth, but there's a deviation there. There's a diversion where Cloud is much more aware here, but in Rebirth he's kind of taken in, almost hypnotized by the power of the black materia and unaware of what just took place with his friend Aerith. Noctwheel says, I have one issue with this version. They didn't play the Forgotten Capital music before Aerith's death, scene like in the OG. I would echo that sentiment wholeheartedly. Noctflugel. 100% with you there. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me see how things are going over here. Looking good. Beautiful. Okay. Let me pull this up. Beautiful, beautiful. Got everything back where it goes. Okay. There is something else I wanted to discuss. Yeah. Let's pull this up. Okay. There is one thing that really worries me about part 3. I have to be honest. There's one particular dynamic happening at Square Enix right now that has me really worried about part 3. Willsword says, I was under the impression Sephiroth was in control post Northern Crater. Yes, I'm not saying Sephiroth isn't acting of his own will, but that the Sephiroth we know now is so corrupted by Jenova, he may as well be a puppet too. And again, in part 3, maybe there's this new Sephiroth, right? The Edge of Creation Sephiroth that has more of a will, absent from Jenova's. But to me, the Sephiroth that we're interacting with both in OG and the Remake trilogy is a Sephiroth heavily influenced by Jenova. He's making his own decisions, don't get me wrong, but he's acting out Jenova's agenda, whether he would admit it or not. And I'm pretty sure he would. But let's talk about this last point. Okay. So, the name of the chapter was Water Burial. For those of you familiar with the story, you can imagine why. But I want to read this statement put out by the team. Thank you for playing Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. This is a message from the management team. After receiving a great deal of feedback regarding the Final Fantasy VII Chapter 9 player title Water Burial, the team began immediate deliberations. Before explaining how we came to settle on this title, we would like to say we deeply regret the fact that our choice upset so many of you, and we are deeply sorry for settling on such an inappropriate choice. When it comes to the player titles that are awarded for clearing main story chapters, we try to account for factors such as the story location and iconic moments. For Chapter 7, we selected planetologies because of the revelations at Cosmo Canyon. And for Chapter 8, we selected Spy because of the events surrounding Kate Sith. As for Chapter 9, we wanted something that expressed the iconic parting with Aerith. Anyway, some people took issue with the fact that the name of the chapter was Water Burial, and they've since gone ahead and changed the name of the chapter, or player title rather, to Prayer Altar. Let me just say, this is what worries me about Part 3. Are they so worried about upsetting people with the idea that Aerith is dead that we're going to always have this sort of wishy-washy approach to it? You know what I'm saying? That we're always going to have this, she's gone, but not really. She's dead, but not actually. She's alive, but not so. Listen, and you know what? It's like, I'm not going to blame this on the devs. Right? I'm not going to blame this on the writers, the devs, the directors. It says it right here. This is a message from the management team. This came from middle management to a degree. In my eyes. I could be wrong about that. And let me just say, what we're talking about here I am not endorsing anyone reaching out to the management team, saying anything, complaining to them, harassing them. Pretend they don't exist. That's my advice to you. Pretend they don't exist. But I would like to critique this approach of handling disgruntled parts of your fan base. It's called Water Burial because that is the iconic moment and is the image all of us think of when we think of the scene where Aerith dies. And what worries me about Part 3 is there is this desire to appease this loud minority of fans, right, who are really, really super attached to Aerith. And the idea that her death is final soils a lot of their hopes for Part 3. So essentially, they endlessly complained until that title was changed. Folsey says, people literally upset about that need to legit go touch grass. Get a job and get a hobby. Do one of those three things. I suggest you do all three, but you can start with one. What is this? I didn't see the statement before. This happened today. This was a today thing. Cowardice begets failure. Lukewarm stories get forgotten. Yeah, all I want for them to do is just do Part 3 with your whole chest. Square, I'm begging you, do Part 3 with your whole chest. No matter what you do, you cannot please everybody. That's what Square Enix needs to know about FF7 Part 3 and a lot of the story decisions that need to become final and can no longer have hints of ambiguity to give certain people hope for certain outcomes. Whatever the outcomes may be, whether you keep them the same, which is what it looks like, by the way, or you decide to change them fundamentally, which it doesn't look like, but we'll see, do it with your whole chest. Do it with your chest out. Leave no room for misunderstandings, and tell the story you want to tell. Tell the story you want to tell. And again, I feel like it wasn't the devs who wanted to make this statement, that ultimately inboxes blew up and they felt like they needed to. I'm just going to say it. Anyone complaining about that stuff are just bandwagoning on a popular IP. Look, let me tell you something, man. I agree with you. But franchises, IPs, stuff like this, fan bases spread far and wide, especially about what happens among those fan bases. Conventions, podcasts, conversations, forums, debates, discourse. And look, there's a lot of ways you can engage with an IP. You can have your fan fictions. You can have your fan art. You can have, your mods. You can have, all these sorts of, there's so many ways you can engage with the IP, and having this sort of fan creativity express alternate endings, alternate outcomes, alternate universes, fan art, fan fiction. There's nothing wrong with that. That's always been a part of fandom, and those people have a right to be a part of this fandom as everybody else. But what's also important is acknowledging canon and not wavering on it when it's crucial to the compilation of the story you're trying to tell. So again, like I said, you can have your fan fiction, you can have her fan art, you can have all those sorts of things. If you want to ship Cisne and Sid Highwind, go ahead to do what you want. But the canon has to matter. And the canon is what the canon's been for almost 30 years now. And I'm sorry, it seems very apparent to me. I'll say it today, as I said it the day I live streamed the ending of Rebirth. Aerith is dead. Aerith's death is crucial to the plot. Not just for Aerith, but it's crucial for Cloud, just as we went over earlier in this episode. So Square, no more apology tours, okay? Tell the story with your whole chest out, because it is our love for this story that's gotten it to where it is. There's no need to pussyfoot around the most crucial point of your plot. Does that imply Sid is a sugar daddy? I don't know, man. I don't know. Cisne's got a job. I mean, she's worked for Shinra. She leads the rebellion over in Gongaga. She's learning how to cook. Okay, she's cracking at it. It does get to a point where fanfic crosses the line and breeds a lot of unnecessary toxicity. Yeah, I think that comes from when there's a disregard for what canon is. That's all. People will never be satisfied, no matter the topic. Always somebody will be complaining. Yeah, again, like I said, you're not going to please everyone. You're just not. There's zero chance you please everyone. A game made for nobody. A game made for everybody is a game made for nobody. This is a game that should be made for fans of Final Fantasy VII, old and new. Old and new. But we love Final Fantasy VII because it's Final Fantasy VII. Nick says, I'm not a shipper, but I generally try to leave those who are alone. But there's one side that just cannot debate the material in good faith. Yeah, and look, shipping is not supposed to be about debating the material. It's supposed to be have your fun. That's about it. We all know. Come on. Cloud and Tifa, Zack and Aerith. It's not a controversial thing to say. I'm tired of pretending like that is. There are people who have come onto my podcast that are afraid to literally say it's Cloud and Tifa, Zack and Aerith. And I get it. You don't want the nasty grams. You don't want the nasty emails. You don't want people attacking you. It just shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a thing that people have to say. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay, I've loved this series. I've loved this story my whole life. It unfolded a certain way. It's unfolding that way again. And I shouldn't have to shy away from saying that. That's all. Starfire says, Starfire, shout out to the Teen Titans. While I understand that Aerith is dead when it comes to the OG game and now Ever Crisis, however, they can always bring her back in Part 3 and delay her death, and perhaps they will with some consequences. I think she's dead. I think the way she comes back is through the live stream, through dreamscapes, through things like that. I don't think her physical body is here anymore. I think the Aerith that lives on the surface of Gaia is gone forever, but there's an Aerith that lives right now within the live stream who still has a role to play. And if you've read Livestream White from On the Way to a Smile, you know that already. They coming for you, Landy. Let them come for me. Let them come for me. I ain't afraid. Anyway, I think part 3, you pull at all of our heartstrings, showing Aerith suffering in the same sort of immortality the Gi have been trapped in. But now with her fate, bound to Sephiroth's will. That's a good one. Very well said. How would you feel if they went with a happy ending this time around? Look, the final shot of part 3 is actually one of the things I expect to really change. Because the original FF7 really does kind of just end abruptly. We all know now through the compilation they all survive. They go on to live lives. Advent Children, Dirge, what have you. On the Way to a Smile. I think one of the things that will change is how the narrative actually wraps up. I think we might still get that jump ship with Nanaki and his kids, but I don't think the last shot will be that big flash and all the party like watching it take place. I think we will see them return to Midgar, return home. Okay. Landy, I had to lock my account one time because of that. You don't want that smoke. Dex, I've gotten the smoke. Maybe one day I'll show it off on a stream. I've gotten very nasty emails, very nasty DMs, people threatening things they have no business threatening. But I sleep very soundly at night in my house for reasons that I'm not going to say out loud. I just feel very safe in my house and protected. Would it be cool that Aerith would be playable in part 3, but the team is not able to see her, only Cloud and maybe Nanaki? Yes, stuff like that. Something like that, Starfire, I could see happening. I could see something like that. If they come for you, Landy, I got you. What are they going to do? Words? Words? I mean, that's all they have is words. You know what's great about the internet? It runs on electricity. You know what's great about electricity? It requires a device. You know what's great about a device? You can turn a device off. Writers should please themselves first and foremost. Writers should write the kinds of stories they enjoy. Because no matter how amazing a writer you are, you're not that different from the average normal person. So if knowing that, you write a story that you yourself would enjoy, that means there will be lots of people out there who enjoy the same kinds of stories that you do. I was mainly being funny. Fair enough. I kind of figured you were. Perhaps Aerith as a summon in part 3. That would be amazing. You know it sinks ships? That's Will, that's good. Will, that's very good. I will give that to you. That is very good. Very good. Alrighty. We're at an hour and 10 minutes. I'm actually going to wrap up the episode here. Thank you so much for chilling, everybody. Let's give a special shout out to Rojix for the $6 super chat. Lands the Master for being a YouTube channel member for 34 months. A YouTube Twitch subscriber for 57. And then Nick coming in with the absurd $50 super chat, causing havoc and chaos on Twitter today. You'll love to see it. When do you think we will see the first teaser? In the next 6 months. I think we get it in the next 6 months, but I think it won't happen until the beginning of 2026. Then you got that 2A protection. That is definitely one way to put it. Little Orphan Funkhauser. That's definitely one way to put it. That and the Castle Doctrine. Anyway, I'll catch you guys on the next one. You guys are all amazing. Love you all. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. You guys make these episodes. I know I say the same thing at the end of every episode, but I really do love you guys. You really make every episode much more fruitful and amazing. But we're going to wrap up here. You guys are all amazing. We'll see you soon. More episodes on the way. More FF7 on the way. We got to talk First Soldier. So I'll see you all soon. See you on the next one. Be good.